Hey everyone, and welcome to the latest Eagle Eye podcast with Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. Reuben, we have a roster.
We do, with 53 players. That is going to change in the next 24 hours, possibly significantly.
Yeah, that's true. That's why we call it the initial 53-man roster, not the final. There's no such thing as a final 53-man roster.
No, we've learned that over the years. There could be 12 of these guys left by the time the Eagles are in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, always an eventful day, roster cut-down day. The Eagles began with 75 players on the roster, 76 players total. They had to get down to 53. So a lot of movement today. Obviously, we'll go through some of our biggest surprises, and then we'll kind of break down what this roster looks like position by position. And then we'll kind of talk about what's next for this group over the next few days, and then the next couple of weeks as we lead into September 12th, the season opener against Atlanta. But let's kind of start with the broad view of this. What are some of the biggest surprises from today for you?
You know, for me, it's just how developmental this roster is and, heavy on draft picks. You look at late round guys like Marlon Tuipulotu and Patrick Johnson, Teron Jackson. These are guys who are promising. I mean, we didn't see a lot from Marlon. The other two guys kind of were promising. But these are late round picks that I think with a conventional roster in a normal year, you might be looking at all three of them on the practice squad, and one or two of them could end up there by tomorrow. But certainly I would think Marlon has a chance. But it's a roster where the emphasis is on youth, draft picks, and guys they saw promise in who might not be ready to play. I mean, seriously, Teron Jackson had a really nice game. He had a couple of good weeks, but where's he going to play? You would hope he would be a core special teamer, but I don't know. I don't know that he's certainly not going to get reps at pass rusher. So, and I think the same thing with a lot of these guys. But considering where the Eagles are as a franchise with a young quarterback and a rookie coach, I do think there's some value in keeping some of those guys.
Yeah, and I think you can even extend that thought process to Landon Dickerson, who, they didn't have to activate him right now. They could have said, we'll keep that roster spot open. We'll put him on the NFI, and which would mean he would miss 6 weeks, which isn't insignificant. But even if he's not, he's a backup right now on this team. Eventually he'll be a starter at one of those positions, but he's a backup right now. And they valued this period for him, the first 6 weeks of the season, where he can at least practice more than getting another guy on the roster. So I think you're right. I mean, that's a good way to look at what they've done here. And Jeff Lurie wasn't shy about where this team is right now, where the roster is, and that this is kind of going to be a little bit of a developmental year. It doesn't mean they're not trying to be competitive, but you're right. I think this initial roster backs that up. For me, I look at the skill positions, 5 receivers, 3 running backs. Something tells me that that's not the way they're going to go into the season. The Jordan Howard cut surprised me a little bit. I didn't think he had some great camp. I thought he looked better than I expected. And based on the way they used him in training camp, I thought he had this roster made. That was the biggest surprise cut for me, I think. Even bigger than Travis Fulgham in a way.
Yeah, I would agree with that. He was getting first team reps. He was the first back that we saw on the field, I think, in at least one or two of the preseason games. Fulgham, I don't think really. I think the only reason you keep Fulgham is because of the 5 games last year. He didn't do anything to win a job, certainly since in training camp. Jordan Howard, I thought, had a good camp, and this is a very young running back room with Boston Miles and Gainwell, and he's the veteran guy. He's a different kind of runner. He's a tough inside runner. So that did surprise me. But I guess when you look at it, where's the value in playing older guys over younger guys? Hassan Ridgeway might be a better player right now than Marlon Tuipulotu, but what are you going to gain by having him take reps from? And I think that goes throughout the team. You just want to get as much as you can on these young guys.
Might win a game. I mean, that would be I'm not arguing that, but that would be the counter logic is they're in this rebuilding, retool, whatever you call this period this year, but they've also been pretty clear they want to be competitive. And you're looking at an NFC East that should be wide open. So I think there is probably a balance there of, hey, we want to be competitive versus, we want to develop these young guys. And there were so many, we talked about this the last pod, but there are so many factors in this roster to figure out the 53 was almost impossible this year. And the vested veterans were part of that. They cut guys like Hassan Ridgeway and Andrew Adams, Richard Rodgers, who are all vested veterans who their contracts and their salaries would have been guaranteed if they made the initial roster, so they can bring them back. There's a lot of these games going on, a lot of different
and Jordan
factors.
Howard fits in that group too.
He does, yes. So I don't know if that's their thinking there, but certainly possible. All right, you want to go through position by position, and we'll go through what they kept and what they got rid of.
And again, I know a lot of fans think it's unfair for teams to do that to veterans, but this is the system the players collectively bargained. This is what they wanted. And so the teams are going to take advantage of every rule in the book that benefits them.
Yeah, I mean, and this team especially is always happy to find any slight advantage. They're going to take advantage of it, and they do quite a bit. All right, so let's go through quarterback. No surprises here. Once the Eagles traded for Gardner Minshew, we knew they were keeping 3. You wrote a piece last week. Someone was going to lose a spot because of it. Jalen Hurts, Joe Flacco, Gardner Minshew. That's a pretty good 3 players. I don't know if one of them is going to play at one time. So I don't know what that really means when you're deep, but that's a pretty good quarterback room.
Yeah, and I think, and we talked about this with COVID and with a 17-game schedule. Why not? And it was funny to see Howie kind of joke about the quarterback factory quote. A little self-deprecation from Howie.
He knows.
Yeah, he knows. He regretted that one the minute he said it. But, odds are you're gonna need more than one. And we've talked about this. Eagles have not had a lot of seasons where the opening day starter was the final day finisher. It just hasn't happened, with a couple exceptions. You hope Jalen Hurts can play the whole season, but if he can't, I think they're in pretty good hands. And Nick Sirianni did mention that Gardner Minshew is the number 3. I don't think that'll change. I don't think there's Joe Flacco did actually finish camp pretty strong, and I don't think there's a big enough gap, Minshew at his best versus Flacco, where Flacco is now, to change it. So I think as long as Flacco's healthy, he's the number 2. Yeah,
well, there's no opportunity to change it. Last year they tried to say that Hurst was the 3rd stringer. Well, we knew that wasn't going to last. That shouldn't have been the case. They did it kind of as a hat tip to Nate Sudfeld, but we knew the situation there. The situation here is there's no reason for Flacco to not be the backup, and there's not going to be any opportunity for Minshew to win that job because he's going to be learning the playbook. He's going to be running scout team. The only chance he has to take over that backup role is if, for some reason, Flacco needs to play and he stinks. I mean, that's the only way Minshew's going to end up with that job this year.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that.
Or Flacco gets traded at some point.
Right, which I wouldn't say is impossible.
No, I agree with that. He's on a 1-year contract, so if the Eagles have a chance to unload him at some point and get something back for him, and they feel like Minshew at that point knows the offense, then I could see them doing that.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right, running back. Only kept 3 here. We talked about this. Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, Kenny Gainwell. Jordan Howard gone, Jason Huntley gone.
Yeah, that's a big surprise. I think Jordan Howard being cut. And again, we might see him again. It's also a position they might explore on the waiver wire for that 4th guy who might be able to play special teams. And Jordan Howard made the effort to play special teams. And, it's not like he's some old guy. I think he's 26, so he's just compared to everyone else and experience-wise. He's a former Pro Bowler and a couple of 1,000-yard seasons. I liked having him around. Obviously, they're not going to go into the season with 3. I'm going to guess, and again, he's still eligible for the practice squad, which he was on last year. everybody's eligible for the practice squad. You could put, Clyde Simmons on the practice squad right now. But I think that the fourth back won't be Jordan Howard on the 53. I just have a hunch it's a position they're going to want, a younger guy, more of a receiving back, and a guy who can play special teams.
Yeah, it's funny because there was a time not that long ago where we thought they might keep 5 running backs.
Yeah.
And now they go in with 3. And Huntley is another guy who did enough this summer that a practice squad spot for him, I don't think is out of the question. No,
I would agree with that. I mean, he was on the 53 last year. So obviously there was something about him that they liked. It's a shame he got hurt. He was having a great camp before he got hurt, but I think he will be on the practice squad. And again, out of all these guys, I mean, only a couple are going to get claimed, probably 1 or 2 maybe. And everyone's like, oh, how can you cut him? Most guys clear waivers. That's just the reality.
Most guys do. We'll do that later, though. We'll look through the cuts and try to pick a couple guys who we think might get claimed. All right, next position, tight end. They keep 4, not really 4. We'll get to that in a second. It's Dallas Goedert, Zach Ertz, Tyree Jackson, and Jack Stoll. The cut here, Richard Rodgers, and we talked about him as a vested veteran. Not that shocking. And honestly, he didn't have that good of a camp.
No, he did not. I put him in there with Ridgeway as guys who've played for this team, didn't play bad for this team in the past, and just didn't do anything to stand out this summer.
Yeah, and this is a new coaching staff. And we'll talk about Fulgham in a minute. They're not – look, Howie's making the ultimate decision here, but this new coaching staff has a huge role. Yes, they've looked at tape from the previous year, but it's not the same as the same coaching staff. Like, they're going to put more value into what they've seen with their own eyes in training camp and in the preseason games and in the joint practices. So I don't think it's that shocking.
And that's the right thing to do. I think that's the right way to look at it. In fact, I think probably more head coaches should do that instead of kind of looking back. Well, he did this 2 years ago, or he did this for us last year. We owe it to. I think that was, Doug really had a soft spot for guys, and he'd keep them around. And I think
Howie when you win a Super Bowl with those guys.
Well, that's true. But even I think Howie has that too. He's even admitted it. He's done a lot for us here and all that stuff. But it's interesting too. Obviously, Tyree Jackson goes on IR, but I kind of thought he'd be on IR before the cut down, and you let him get healthy and take the year to redshirt. But this tells you, they think at some point this year he's going to play.
And help them. You don't keep if you don't think he can help. And I guess if you're trying to develop him, if he's on IR, he can't practice,
right,
which is a big part of it. And that kind of gets back to the developmental theme of this roster. But yeah, so he'll go on IR. But the problem is you can't put him on IR until after your claims go in. And Howie was talking about that. So it's a tricky spot. You can't say, well, there's a spot right there because you can IR him and maybe Jernard Avery, who's been hurt. Because you have to claim and find a spot for a player you claim before those guys go on IR, which makes the whole thing much trickier.
Yeah, right. So, there are some built-in spots here of guys that if they have to release them, they'll release them, and presumably, and then now you're talking about a team claiming them after their second 53 is set, and that becomes tricky. So, but there is some built-in breathing room here on this roster.
Yeah, and what do you think about Jack Stoll making the team?
Well, he had a great camp. We'll see what happens. We'll see if he's still around when the smoke settles. Guy caught something like 50, 60 balls his entire career in Nebraska. Obviously, he only played a couple games last year. I think he caught 7 passes last year, but he had a really good camp. He caught the ball well, and I would think he'd be a good core special teamer if he's on the roster, if he's activated.
Only undrafted rookie, right? Because Coyote got cut.
And Tyree Jackson's not a rookie.
Yeah.
If it was MLB, he'd be a rookie.
It's not.
But it's not. So I believe you are correct. The only undrafted rookie. And there's a bunch of if you spend a day in a camp or with another team or with in another league, I think he played in one of those other leagues, you lose your rookie status. So yeah, Jack Stoll.
Okay, let's go to receiver. Only 5 here, which is to me less of a surprise than the 3 running backs. But the 5 here are Devontae Smith, Jalen Reagor, Quez Watkins. We knew those three were solidified. They're the starters. Greg Ward, who we all kind of assumed was going to make the team. And then it gets tricky. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside is the fifth guy in, which means Travis Fulgham, John Hightower, and Andre Patton are out.
And I had Andre Patton ahead of all those guys. I mean, and we went through this so many times, like if they keep 6, if they keep 5. I thought Hightower would be the first to go, but I thought J-Jaw would go ahead of Fulgham. So I was wrong on that count. I think Hightower is a natural for the practice squad. He'll go through waivers. I don't know about Fulgham. That'll be really interesting because teams see what he did over 5 weeks. I think he's going to get claimed. Now, I mean, it's been a long time since. I mean, he has, and again, people say, well, why did he never played after they activated Alshon last year? And that's not true. I mean, he was already slumping. I mean, he had a bad game against the Giants before Alshon. He had a bad game against the Browns, and then Alshon, his first couple of games, only played a handful of snaps, and Fulgham was still playing a lot and had 2 more bad games. Still starting. It was, I think, the Giants and the Cowboys. So Fulgham was 4 games into his slump or whatever you want to call it when Alshon finally, and they were in the running for the division. So Doug played Alshon, and Alshon actually played better than Fulgham at that point, which, it's not a very high bar between the two, but now they're both gone. I think Fulgham gets claimed. Yeah,
that's possible. Hightower, you're right. I think getting him on the practice squad will be doable, and it makes sense. There are developable traits there. It was interesting when asked about J-Jaw, how he didn't hesitate to bring up special teams, that, he's really worked on that part of his game. Because, look, if you're one of the last receivers in, it's almost a requirement. And he's not a great special teamer, but he does more there than Hightower and Fulgham. Fulgham did a little bit. He was a gunner at a time. But, I mean, if you can separate yourself a little bit, and look, being a second-round pick doesn't hurt in this case.
No, it doesn't. And I've said this all along. I've written it. I just think I think there's something there with J-Jaw, and maybe I'm crazy. I probably am, but I think there's a chance he can play. Now, I'm on the record as saying he might have to be somewhere else for that to happen, but if he's a different kind of receiver than those other 4 guys. I mean, he's a bigger body. He's a long arms and catch radius, and he's not a speedster, but if he has to play, I know he's not close to being a speedster, but he is a different kind of guy, and I think there's something to that. And so that's why, to me, it came down to Fulgham versus J-Jaw. They were the 2 kind of slower, bigger, targets. And I mean, J-Jaw didn't have a great camp, but he had a better camp than Fulgham. I mean, if you're measuring them from the start of camp, and he came on, I thought the last week or 10 days or so, I thought he came on, and we kept waiting for Fulgham to start doing that. He never really did.
Yeah, I mean, Fulgham had so many chances, and we talked about this before on a previous pod. He had so many chances during this camp to make what I would call spectacular catches. I mean, like laying out, diving, or leaping catches, the kind of catches he was making during that run last year, and I don't remember him catching any of them.
No,
he had one decent day in the joint practices against the Jets, but he also had a terrible drop that same day. So it was just, he had every chance to make this team, and he couldn't do it. And J-Jaw wasn't spectacular. I thought he actually had a better training camp last year, which is why, until he shows something in actual games, I'm not ready to say he can play. I'm still very skeptical about him, but sure. He was more consistent, and he did make more plays than Fulgham, and he finished stronger. And especially in that last game, you saw Fulgham had a chance, and I'm not going to kill him for this because he's trying to get in the end zone, but the ball gets stripped. It's a touchback. Meanwhile, J-Jaw has a great touchdown, and then on the ensuing kick, gets a special teams tackle.
Well, the guy was down. I mean, the guy was down. There. He was just the first guy, but yeah, I mean, he did. Yeah. I thought those 2 plays really, I mean, it's you can't blame Fulgham for the touchback. But again, it's a play that if you make it, it's going to help you. I'm not going to kill him for it. It wasn't a great throw by Mullins. Was there ever a great throw by Mullins? I'm not sure, but
the first day of camp, he was the backup. I thought
he lit it up back in the first.
Coming for Jalen Hurst's job first day of camp.
Yeah. He had a good July. He did not have a good August. But again, I think there's going to be movement here. I don't think it's a lock that Jay Jaw is on the roster by the end of the day tomorrow. I was looking through the receivers who were cut, and there's some interesting names. But he did outplay Fulgham. There's no doubt.
Yeah. All right. Offensive line, they kept 10. They went heavy on the offensive line after last year. I guess you can understand that. Here they are: Jordan Mailata, Isaac Seumalo, Jason Kelsey, Brandon Brooks, Lane Johnson, Andre Dillard, Jack Driscoll, Landon Dickerson, Nate Herbig, Brett Toth. They cut Sua Opeta, LaRaven Clark, Coyote Awasika, and they traded Matt Pryor.
And Howie's in the running for executive of the decade for getting anything for Matt Pryor. It's an interesting group. I never would have guessed Brett Toth would make it. I'll tell you what, the fact that Brett Toth is on this team, is on an NFL roster, it just speaks volumes for Jeff Stoutland. I mean, the guy.
And the starting left tackle is a rugby player.
Starting left tackle is a rugby player. I mean, but you look through the whole thing. I mean, Herbig's undrafted. Driscoll was a 4th-round pick who played well last year. I mean, he's just, and I'm sure we'll see a couple guys. We'll see Coyote certainly on the practice squad.
He makes it there.
He'll make it there. They kind of hit him, I think.
He played a lot in that last game. I think word might be out a little bit about him.
Word could be out, but I think he clears waivers and is on the practice squad. But and Sua, I think they could bring Sua back assuming he clears waivers.
If he clears waivers, I think that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
You've invested 2 years in that kid.
I think he's probably the guy that, 10 offensive linemen. So with Dickerson being activated, Sua probably would have been cut anyway, even with Minshew. I mean, I don't think he played bad last year when he played. I think Herbig's just a little bit better. Yeah,
I agree with that. And I think Herbig slimming down this summer helped him because he's a little more athletic. I think that's really why they went to Opeta last year, is they wanted to have a little bit more athleticism with that spot. And Sua is athletic. He's still kind of raw. Like and I think even Jason Kelsey mentioned this a while back, that Sua had the raw athleticism, but still kind of learning the NFL game. But that guy's worth keeping around as a practice squad player.
Oh, yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, you look at every guy on that offensive line and where they were before Stoutland. I mean, like even Brandon Brooks had never been to a Pro Bowl before Stout. Jason Kelsey had never been to a Pro Bowl before Stout. Mm-hmm. Lane's played his whole career with Stout, but I mean, the guy's a magician. He's incredible.
Yeah, and LaRaven Clark, who knows? Maybe either they put him on the practice squad or they tell him, stay by your phone. He didn't look bad when he got back from the PUP list. So
it was a tough ask because, I mean, he only came back about, 8-9 days ago.
Yeah, it was tough. But, I mean, if he doesn't get picked up by another team, you tell him to stay in shape and you say you never know what happens.
Yeah, good chance of that. Hey, score big with the AAA Eagles MVP membership. Along with the superb roadside assistance and discounts you've come to expect from AAA, get exclusive Eagles-related perks. For details, visit AAA.com/Eagles.
All right, you want to go through this defensive list here?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's start on the line with defensive end. Brandon Graham, Derek Barnett, Josh Sweat, Ryan Kerrigan, Teron Jackson. I think Jackson is the one slight surprise there. He finished strong in camp. There were flashes throughout. But you're right. You mentioned developing players. He's a guy that's worth developing, and they didn't want to lose him.
Yeah, I thought he played great against the Jets. I mean, he really was made a lot of plays, was really active, came a long way. And if you had asked me 2 weeks ago, I thought there's no chance Teron Jackson's on the 53. But there he is.
Yeah. Any other surprises there? I mean, that's pretty good. That's a good group there. We'll see. Barnett's been banged up. He has a shoulder injury. He's missed some time now, actually.
And that could be part of it, too, because Kerrigan hasn't practiced.
Yeah, that's true.
So, Teron Jackson's a healthy body. I mean, he did leave the game the other night, but he came back. So,
and I'm listing Milton Williams as a defensive tackle because that's what they list him as. But you can argue he's more of an end right now.
Yeah, and it gives them some flexibility there. If Barnett, this has been the story of Barnett's career. He's just hurt all the time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's been interesting. Our colleague Bo Wolf asks every single player that we talk to what players they think are going to have a breakout season, and it seems like half of the guys have said Josh Sweat. It's really interesting. Yeah. I mean, everybody, all the players, like nobody says Derek Barnett. Maybe they think he's already established, but to me, Josh Sweat is ahead of Derek Barnett, even healthy. So interested to see what kind of year he has.
Yeah, I mean, Sweat's just, I think part of that is just because he's such a physical specimen. Like he pops so much because he's so long, but he's so quick off the ball. And like physically speaking, it's such a silly comparison because Javon Curse was such a great player, but you see this long, lanky guy walk in. For me, the first day Josh Sweat got here, that's who came to my mind.
Yeah, that's fair. First day Javon Curse got here, I think was also the first day T.O. got here. So nobody was really paying attention to Javon Curse.
Yeah. Which is funny to think about.
Yeah,
he was a pretty good player. All right, defensive tackle, Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave, Milton Williams, and Marlon Tuipulotu. And look, we talked about him already, but on merit, he doesn't make this roster. Not a knock on him. I thought he got off to a really slow start. He did start to show some signs, especially against the Jets in the joint practices and in that game. I don't think he did enough to really deserve it, but here he is.
Yeah, and certainly with Fletcher and Hargrave, and Milton, you feel like you're in pretty good shape. But again,
are they though?
Well, depth-wise, I mean, you're concerned a little bit just because Fletcher's going to play 70% of the snaps and Hargrave's going to play 55 to 60, and that's a lot of snaps. I think you pretty much have to play Milton Williams inside unless you bring somebody else in. Hey, Bruce Hector got cut. So
I mean, I think defensive tackle is one of the positions they could look at. And by the way, T.Y. McGill was not cut. He was put on the COVID-19 list. So there's a chance that later on, before the first game even, he could be taken off that list. And by then, the Eagles will have probably IR'd someone, so there'll be a spot open. So I think there's a chance he's on the roster week 1.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we don't know. But, yeah.
It's so funny. They keep finding ways to keep T.Y. around. Like last year, they elevated him like 10 times.
Yeah.
When they were only supposed to get 2 elevations because of the COVID stuff. And now this year he ends up on the COVID list, which is, you hope he's okay. You hope he's healthy. But that probably helped Howie out a little bit.
A little bit. And again, he's not on
the guy there.
Not on the 53. So, but hopefully he's back soon.
And then Hassan Ridgeway is another one of those vested veterans. Maybe we see him at some point.
I doubt it.
I thought he had a disappointing summer.
Really uneventful. I don't remember him making one play. I think we'll see. I think he's the only guy on the roster that was with the Colts with Nick Sirianni, right? Oh, well, Andre Patton, I guess, was. No.
Oh, he's gone.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm saying who was on the training camp.
Oh, no. Well, wasn't he with the Chargers?
Yeah, he was with the Chargers. Yeah, that's why I corrected myself before you got a chance to do it. But, yeah, Ridgeway he just didn't do anything. I think if they bring in a tackle, it won't be Ridgeway. I think they'll hit the waiver wire for someone.
And it's a shame with him. He's still a pretty young guy. And when he's been healthy over the last few years, he's played well. He hasn't been healthy in 3 years. He's missed significant time. So maybe, who knows, maybe those injuries have taken a toll on him.
Or maybe they were just going to bring him back for week 8, thinking he's always gotten hurt week 7.
I like the way Howie's playing chess there.
Yeah, he is.
All right, linebacker, which was one of the tougher spots to figure out on this team. They kept 7, which is quite a bit. Eric Wilson, Alex Singleton, TJ Edwards, Davion Taylor, Jannard Avery, Sean Bradley, Patrick Johnson. The most notable cut here, 6th-round pick, Jacoby Stevens.
Yeah, Jacoby Stevens. I'm sure we'll see him again if he doesn't get claimed. He won't get claimed, so he'll be back on the practice squad. A little surprised about Avery. He's just been hurt. He hasn't done it.
Are you though?
I am. I thought, it's been 2 years. Trade deadline in 2019. I thought they were going to move on from him, but here he is. he's Howie's guy. Patrick Johnson, another one of those developmental young late round rookies who could be here tomorrow, might not be, but had a pretty good camp. And he's versatile. He plays all three linebacker spots. He can play that Sam. So can Avery. So that tells me that it'll be Avery. It won't be Patrick Johnson, because why would you keep two of them?
Well, you might need two, and Avery's been hurt.
Avery's has been hurt. We'll see. Johnson's an intriguing guy. I don't know how ready he is to play, but he's in that same group with Teron Jackson and Tui Pelotu.
Yeah, and Davion Taylor has been hurt for a while. He has a pretty significant calf injury, so he might be a good candidate for IR. And by the way, IR rules this year are the same as last year, which is they should have done this years ago. If you get put on IR, you have to miss a minimum of 3 weeks. So there's no long-term IR anymore. Once you get to this point, you can put a guy on IR and you bring him back after missing 3 games. That's not bad. I mean, that's a chance to really manipulate the roster as you go. And the Eagles took advantage of it last year, just like every other team did.
Yeah, I can't imagine Davion Taylor doesn't go on IR. I don't think he's close to practicing 3 weeks. It used to be 4 weeks way back in the day. You'd have to be on for at least 4 weeks. And they changed it to 6 weeks, and then they made it a year, the entire year. And then I think they had exemptions. They had like 1 or 2 guys you could recall after so many weeks. But
you had to designate them.
You had to designate them.
And you had 2 designations. When
they went on IR. So I like this system, and it really makes sense. I mean, why would you limit, especially in a 17-game season? It just makes sense. So I would think Taylor goes on IR. Sean Bradley's a guy who I thought helped himself. I thought he was really active against the Jets. I think he's going to be a really good special teamer. I'm not sure how much he's ready to help out at linebacker, but like you always say, I mean, they're going to play 2 backers. They're going to be very few snaps with 3 backers. So it's really Eric Wilson and Singleton and then TJ Edwards and then the Sam guy. We don't know how much Gannon's going to play. That's kind of like this hybrid guy. I don't have a sense how much that guy's going to play. 8 to 12.
I mean, based on what we saw at training camp, that's the 3rd linebacker.
Right. So, I
do think there's a chance that Singleton could play that position. They haven't shown it yet.
Yeah.
I think there's a chance that Singleton could play that position, and then they could get TJ out there at the other spot.
I thought TJ quietly had a decent camp. I
agree with that.
Yeah. Because I thought coming in, he's a guy who, he started some games. He's a sure tackler, but he's an undrafted guy a couple of years ago. I thought he was on the bubble coming into camp, but I thought he's gotten better. I thought he's covering better. I thought he had a good camp. So
I'll tell you what, I write a lot of little inside how the magic happens here. I write some little blurbs for the tracker, so I'm ready to go if and when guys get cut. Didn't write one for TJ Edwards. That's how confident I was he was going to be.
Wait, you start before the cuts? You mean you're allowed to do that?
I would never.
Never occurred to me.
I don't know. I think TJ Edwards and Sean Bradley are going to be core special teamers. Davion Taylor might be once he's healthy. But remember, Sean Bradley was kind of ahead of him last year in special teams role.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he led the team in special teams reps. I think Bradley did. And
did he?
Yeah, he's a good one. Pride of Rancocas Valley, Red Devil.
That is true. All right, I'm going to move on before Rube starts talking about his track career. Cornerback, there are 5. Darius Slay, Steve Nelson, Avonte Maddox, Zach McPherson, and Josiah Scott. Craig James, the big cut here.
Yeah, Josiah Scott came on, and he was one of those guys that he would make a play, and we'd kind of look at each other like, whoa. You were on him early. I got to tell everybody, Dave was on Josiah Scott early saying that he's got a chance to make this team.
Well, they traded for him, so it wasn't like and I don't think I ended up keeping him on my last 53 man. I had Craig James on.
I'm trying to talk you up.
Yeah, well, Craig James, pretty good special teams player. I know he's struggled to stay healthy, but They cut him and Elijah Riley, by the way. Two guys who could really help this team from a special teams perspective.
And they did it on Michael Clay's birthday also.
They did. Today was Michael Clay's birthday, and they cut his two best special teamers. What a mess.
Yeah, really, that's not very nice. But, I mean, I don't know what kind of special teamer Josiah Scott is. He better be a pretty good one.
5'9".
Yeah, I know. So
they kept I think they kept him. Look, he had a good camp, and I get that he's a skilled nickel corner, but to me, they kind of toward the end of camp, he got a few snaps outside, but he's a nickel, so you're keeping a nickel only backup.
Yeah.
That'd be tough to justify for me.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point.
But I guess they feel like he's developable, and Avante's going in the last. He could be the starting nickel next year. I guess that's the way they look at it.
And Craig James could be on the practice squad by this time tomorrow as well.
Safety only kept 4: Rodney McLeod, Anthony Harris, Kayvon Wallace, Marcus Epps. I think this is even more notable because Kayvon's been banged up. He's been injured. So they cut Andrew Adams, Elijah Riley. Am I reading into it too much, or does it look like Rodney might be ready for week 1?
I think that tells you pretty clearly Rodney will be ready for week 1. I mean, you don't do that. You don't go, especially because Kayvon's hurt. You don't go into this with Anthony Harris and Marcus Epps. So I think that's a pretty clear sign that Rodney will be available in 13 days, 12 days when Eagles play the Falcons.
Yeah, I thought Andrew Adams had a shot to make it for that reason, because I thought, if you want a guy to start that first game that's not Rodney, you probably want the guy with more experience.
He started like 30 games in his career. Yeah.
Yeah. He's played significant time. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, that's the first thing I thought of when I saw both those guys were cut was Rodney's playing in the opener.
Yeah, you're probably right. All right. 3 specialists: Jake Elliott, Aaron Sipas, and Rick Lovato. They ran unopposed this year. No surprises there. So what's next for this roster, Rube?
Wow, that was abrupt. Well, I do.
You want to talk about Rick Lovato and how he looked this summer?
I thought he snapped really well.
Yeah,
I really did. I thought he came on, the last 2 weeks. No, I do think they'll be active again. Special or waiver claim priority is based for the first, I think, 6 weeks of the season on your record last year. So it goes in draft order, basically. So that tells you the Eagles are going to
an initial draft order.
Original draft. Yeah, you can't trade. If Howie could trade,
he would trade for waiver claim spot. Yeah.
He would do it. But so it's
which is 6, by the way.
Yeah. So they're in. So that means that if 5 teams file a waiver claim on a player, whoever has the highest waiver claim priority gets that player. So that also means you have to get rid of someone who's on your roster. So when you're 6th, you have a pretty good chance to get that player. So, and obviously, unless 1 through 5, someone in there also files a claim. Now, I think it's week 6, waiver claim priority goes to the current regular season record. So, yeah, I'm thinking at least 3 guys.
I was just about to ask you. I was going to put the over/under at 2.5, but you beat me to
3 guys. I think a D tackle. I think a D tackle. I think a receiver. And then I think an X factor in there, How
about a running back?
Could be a running back. See, I think they're going to bring Jordan Howard back, but could be a running back. How Howie doesn't like running backs to have a lot of mileage on them. So I think
I could see a secondary player too.
It could be a Huntley. Yeah, I could see an outside corner. Depending what happens with Craig James or safety, just because they're so thin there. But I think 3 guys is a good number.
Yeah, the last time they did that was 2016. So maybe they can keep the streak going with a first-year head coach. It makes sense, though. You're turning over the roster. And I think what we saw in training camp, the preseason, some of the deep depth on this team left a little to be desired.
Is deep depth, isn't that like redundant? Deep depth?
No, I think there can be middle depth on a football team.
Okay. I have to sleep on that one, but yeah, I think we saw in the second half of most of the preseason games, the depth of the team wasn't great.
Yeah.
there's definitely room for changes. Nothing against some of these rookies, but I think that it could even be more than 3. It really wouldn't surprise me. I think they're going to be really active.
That would be a lot. I mean, 3's a lot.
Yeah, and again, these are guys that you're going to have to. The tricky thing is you have, they get into the building. They can't even get into the building till the end of the week, right? I think they have to pass 2 COVID tests just to get in the building, and then you got to coach them up and get them acclimated and teach them the system, at least the basics of it, pretty quickly. So, you wouldn't expect these guys to play in the opener or early in the season, but they might have to. Especially you look at D tackle. You bring in a guy, he might have to play. So it'll be interesting. I think 3 or 4 guys is realistic.
Yeah, you might be right there. All right, give me, who do you think of the Eagles waived players has the most likelihood of getting claimed?
By another team, who that was waived has the highest likelihood of getting.
Is it Fulgham? You mentioned Fulgham earlier.
Team, I think it's Fulgham. I do. I do think he gets claimed. I don't think a lot of those guys will.
The other names that kind of popped to me are Sua Opeta, just because he has some experience in the league. I think people know about him a little bit. I think Coyote has an outside chance, and maybe Jason Huntley is the only other name that sticks out to me.
I'd say Craig James. Teams are always looking for outside corners.
Okay.
I think there's a chance. And he's a good special teamer. I would say Fulgham 1, Craig James 2.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Which one is the least? No, we won't do that. Anything else you want to talk about on this roster?
No. It's just that we're just getting started. There's a lot to come. Hey, it's been a year full of uncertainty, but one thing is certain. Independence Blue Cross can help you make the healthcare decisions that are right for you and your family. Choose coverage you can count on with the region's strongest network. Independence Blue Cross. Learn more at ibx.com.
Some breaking news from Tuesday's press conference.
I never would have guessed. I'm shocked. We're all in shock.
Jalen Hurts is this team's starting quarterback.
Yes.
Who'd have thunk it?
Yeah, I really thought Clayton Thorsten had a shot. I thought Kyle Lauletta had a shot. Once I saw Nick Mullins play, I really thought he was in the mix. But I understand why Nick didn't want to announce it, right? And we all knew it. I mean, like Nick even said, you guys saw he played every rep. He got every rep with the first team since the first day of camp. But he wanted. First, I think he wanted consistency. He didn't want to name anybody a starter, and including the quarterback. And he wanted, he said he wanted to see Jalen take the reins. He wanted to see him earn it. And I understand that. I get that. He wanted to see him kind of take command of the position, take ownership of it without it being handed to him, even though we all knew it was his job. And I get that. Dave's looking at the scans.
I whatever. It's not a big deal. He can have his reasons. I thought it was silly. Say it was just like we all knew it was a starter.
I'm just trying to rationalize it. It was.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, we all knew he was a starter, so whatever. I mean, he is, and I thought overall he had a really good summer. I was impressed by him in 2 phases. I mean, I was impressed by him, just the presence he has, and you can tell that he's revered by his teammates. And we started to see that.
In a way that, excuse me, this is not a knock on anybody in particular, on any quarterback in particular. I'm not referring to anyone specifically. But you can, I mean, the way his teammates talk about him, the reverence, the guys on defense, the reverence they talk about Jalen Hurts. We haven't seen that around here with a quarterback since Nick. That doesn't really leave a lot of room for the imagination. But in all seriousness, they really do gravitate toward him, and they respect him, and they appreciate his work ethic, which is, off the charts. And I think he had a good camp. Look, I don't know how it's going to go, but I think it's going to be fun to watch him.
Yeah, and I
just kept digging myself diggers.
Yeah, I know. I mean, we started to see that last year, and I think that in a way, it was almost a problem last year because we saw it so early. But this year, it's very welcome. It's a very welcome character trait to have. Whereas last year, it not that it wasn't, but it made things trickier last season. This year, we all know the situation, and it's been good. And honestly, he's impressed me on the field more than I thought. He can sling it. It's based on, look, I'm not fully convinced that he's a good enough thrower to be their long-term solution. I'm just not. And that's not a knock on him. But I'm pleasantly surprised by what I've seen in training camp.
No, I think that's fair. I would agree with both of those elements of that statement. I think the one thing that Nick said that I really agree with was he was impressed with the way Jalen ran and understanding when not to run. I think that's a big part of any athletic quarterback's development is, sometimes the smart thing to do is to not run and to throw it. You can use the ability to run as a weapon without running, without crossing that line of scrimmage. You can draw defenders up and get a guy open just by the threat of running. And he seems to understand that. And a lot of running quarterbacks don't really, and again, we haven't seen him do it in games, so I'm not going to say he's mastered it, but he understands it at least and understands the value of leaving defenses guessing over what he's going to do. So I thought the real emphasis with Jalen this summer was throwing the ball. And which makes sense. That's the area he needs to improve. Exactly. And he just didn't see him take off unless he absolutely had to. And I thought that was encouraging. And we'll see. I mean, sometimes when the game starts and all of a sudden you can revert to, I got to run and make a play. And I think there's time for that. I do. Sure. There's a balance to be struck. And we'll see how well he and some of this is a coaching staff too. We'll see the positions they put him in. Another newsy item, kind of, Jordan Mailata is this team's starting left tackle. It became pretty evident early on, but I mean, this was a legitimate battle at a certain point. It didn't last as a legitimate battle, but there was never a chance that Joe Flacco was going to be this team's starter. Theoretically, there was a chance Andre Dillard would start at left tackle. Yeah, I think that's true. I think that's definitely true. And again, Nick is a new guy here, and he's got two left tackles, and he wanted to see him. Now, I think Stout probably knew all along it wasn't going to be Dillard. But again, Jordan Mailata won this job more than Dillard giving it away. I think the difference is significant, but Mailata had a really good camp, and he won this job. Fair and square. I mean, honestly, if they tied, the tie probably goes to the first round pick, but it didn't come close to that. Interesting. I don't know if that. Yeah, I don't know how you can tie, but I think you can tie. I think it was clear. Yeah, I guess you could. It was clear to me. I mean, it was clear to most of us after a week. Yeah, I don't even know if it took that long. I mean, Mailata's just a better player right now. Yeah. But I thought Nick Sirianni chose his words carefully. He talked up Andre Dillard because he's still on the team and he's the backup left tackle, at least for now. We'll see. Maybe they try to trade him at some point because they did keep Brett Toth around. And so you have Jack Driscoll. You have other options. But right now, Dillard's on this team. And based on the way things have gone the last few years, they're probably going to need him at some point if he stays here. Yeah, I mean... Yeah, I really think that Dillard helped himself against the Jets. He really did play well in that game. It's probably it's the first time we've seen him play in a couple of years. It's probably the best we've seen him play ever, preseason game. But Brett Toth, you mentioned Brett Toth. I mean, that's a crazy story. This is a guy who never pass blocked in college. They threw the ball I looked it up, and they threw the ball 31 times his entire college career in Army. I mean, they just ran down after down after down. And I remember he had to play. He had to go in and play one game last year, and he looked lost. It's another Stoutland miracle. I mean, what he's able to do, it's incredible to get this guy to the point where he can be on a 53. I don't know if he'll ever play, but If you had asked me, in July 27th when camp started, whether Brett Toth had a chance at the roster, I said, no way.
Yeah, well, they've always really liked him. They lost him a couple years ago when they released him, and it was kind of a surprise claim, at least to me. Arizona claimed him, and the Eagles had to wait their turn to get him again. I guess they just figured, we're not losing this guy again. There's something there.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. But here he is, and he's come a long way.
Yeah, he has. Anything else before we wrap this up?
No, I think tomorrow's going to be a fun day. And yeah. And any former Eagles, are you surprised any former Eagles who got Cody Parkey got cut, apparently?
To be honest, I haven't had a chance to really look through the other teams. Anyone surprise you?
Damian Square.
I saw some of that. Jordan Matthews, Josh Adams.
Josh Adams got cut. I would sign Josh Adams. I would claim him.
Would you?
Yeah. He runs hard.
I think you can do better than that.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, never mind. Sharif Miller, I didn't realize he was in a camp, former Eagles 4th-round pick.
It is funny. There's all these names that you just, that guy. Prince Tego Onogo got cut by the Chiefs.
Did he really?
Mm-hmm.
I thought he had shot. Yeah, there's a bunch of those guys. But knowing Howie, we'll see a couple of them back here tomorrow. He likes bringing guys back. We know that.
Yeah, that's a good point to wrap up on. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. The YouTube audience, we appreciate you too. Please click like and subscribe there. That's it. We'll be back with you later in the week to figure out what's next for the Eagles. For Reuben, I'm Dave. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah.